back, everyone. Welcome back to Dad Space, the podcast for dads by dads. And I have a great dad joining me here in the podcast. He just did a talk recently to a great group of people, and he wanted to come on and share a little bit about what he talked about there. Talk about his men's group. He's got so many great things. He's an author as well. So we got lots to talk about. And Darren's on the podcast. Darren, welcome to Dad Space. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, awesome, David. How are you doing? Are you good?
I am good. I'm very good because I get to talk to you. So the fact that you have time for me and the audience is great. Thank you. As I hear your amazing accent, of which I do not have an accent, just so you know, let's clarify. As a Canadian, we don't have accents.
No accent.
You sound amazing. Where are you from, Darren? Tell everybody where you are.
Yeah, awesome. I'm from Stoke-on-Trent. We're famous for the potteries. There is actually some tiles, I think, in one of the galleries in New York that they've used from Stoke-on-Trent. Lemmy from Motorhead is from here. Robbie Williams, I'm not sure if you guys over in Canada know about Robbie Williams, but he was in a big boy band called Take That. So, you know, we're famous for a couple of things. It's a bit of a... there's a lot of regeneration going on, David, so it's quite an exciting time being here. You know, I think it felt like it had been left behind for a few years, but some great stuff's happening, man, and it's I'm proud to be from here, so that's good.
Amazing. You're going to come on my Living the Next Chapter podcast to talk about your book specifically.
Yeah,
but I want the dads to know that this book is out there. Can you tell everybody a little bit about the book as well?
Yeah, Dreams to Goals was written in the first UK lockdown. I sort of set my goals at the beginning. Well, I set my goals at the end of the year for the following year. And one of them was to write this book that I'd always wanted to write. And I didn't want, a pandemic and a lockdown of the world to write it, but it created that space to write it. So I wrote the first one, which is about taking that dream, David, and breaking it down into manageable goals. And then quickly followed that up the following year with the second one, which is 23 Rules of Life that most people don't want to hear. So, looking forward to catching up with you about them. That'll be amazing.
Amazing. So for those that are listening, they're like, oh, I got to get these books today. I don't want to wait for that recording of that episode.
Yeah.
Where do we find your books, Darren? How do we get all these great books in our life?
Both on Amazon, both available on Amazon. That's the best place.
Okay.
Amazon's a little bit like a record company. They take a lot of your money, but, you're on a global platform. So it's cheaper than I can post it out to, David. That's the thing. So when I did my first book launch, I did it on an evening when we were in lockdown. So I did it on Facebook Live. Somebody brought me book at 10 o'clock at night and from Amazon, and they got it 8 o'clock the next morning. It's like, how can you even compare with that? You can't compete.
Okay, so that's great. Good. We'll have links for the books then and your website and everything in the show notes so people can connect with you. Darren, it's great. But okay, so you got the chance to stand up in front of a group of people and talk. How did this talk come to be? Like, how did they find you? Which is great to have you speak.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the event itself.
Yeah, so I do a dad's group with a CIC in the UK. So it's not, not a charity, but kind of in between a business and a charity, doing amazing work. They got some funding for a dad's group. Janine, who's like the CEO there, she's absolutely amazing, and she invited me to speak at this event, which was a perinatal event. So it's a different event than I'm used to speaking at. I'm used to speaking in front of men. With my Seat at the Table network, I run regular events through that where we have a guy speaking who's sharing something that he's overcome that can help other guys. But this really was a little bit of a different one. And funnily enough, I used to be terrified of public speaking. I can remember at school having to speak in front of the class, going bright red and forgetting what I was saying, and I somehow muddled through. But started really enjoying it, and I started enjoying speaking in front of those different audiences, David, as well. So I was at this perinatal event. They were all lady speakers. The audience was probably about 30 or 40 women and 2 guys. So this is why I think it's important not to really rehearse a speech, but to write down some key points that you want to talk about and then get those key points across, because I think you need to gauge who your audience is when you actually go there rather than sort of prepare it beforehand. So what I always do is prepared about 5 or 6 points and spoke about those points. And one of the things with like perinatal mental health, what they talk about is I think it's 12 months up until the baby's born, and then the 2 years after is kind of classed as perinatal. That a lot of women really get postnatal depression and sort of perinatal depression, but as men, we apparently, we get that as well. And my take on that is that you were struggling a little bit anyway, and then the pressure of having a baby put on top of you sort of exasperates that feeling that you're already feeling. So what I think is really important is building up that resilience beforehand, so that you don't, when these sort of not traumatic, but I suppose childbirth for some people can be traumatic. My story was we were living in Spain, and we came back with the intention of saving up to go Australia again. My daughter's mum didn't think that she could have children. She was told by a doctor that it was highly unlikely. And we've been back a couple of weeks, and she was pregnant. So life kind of changed overnight. So at first I was terrified. I don't mind admitting I was scared. I kind of felt like I was a child in a 26-year-old man's body, really, and I didn't really know how to look after myself. And then all of a sudden, I'm hit with you've now got to look after somebody else and guide this like little person in the world. And then as the time went on, it got closer and closer. I started getting really, really excited about it. And when Ellie was born, it kind of felt like this is why I'm here. This is what my purpose is, to be a dad. But the build up to that, which is kind of what I spoke about at that event, where I was struggling. I was really struggling. I felt like I needed to be excited and put on this facade that, everything was great and it was really excited, when, the reality was I was full of fear. Right.
And I think there's a lot of dads that experienced that. I
think so.
I felt overwhelmed with my kids. Right. I can remember walking out of the hospital with my firstborn.
Yeah.
And my wife, my firstborn, and the three of us now, leaving the hospital for the first time to go home, and nobody followed me home.
Right.
Nobody came with me to make sure I was okay and that I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
They're just like, they wave at you, goodbye, see you, Darren.
Yeah.
And you're like,
yep.
All of the support that I've had in the hospital, all these amazing nurses and the doctors and everything we've been through.
Yeah.
And then the next day, it's like, you can go now.
Yeah.
And you're like looking at your partner going, can we actually do this?
Yeah.
Like, I want all these people to come with me because I don't remember how to change a diaper. I don't remember how to do all this.
No,
right?
Okay.
You're just like, oh, it's real. It's actually real.
Yeah, and I found it quite, the day she was born was absolutely amazing. But then I found that sort of probably 12 months quite, the word anxious is thrown about a lot, but feeling quite anxious, like prodding her when she was asleep and things like that. You hear all these things of cot death and is she okay? Is she all right? And then she wakes up like crying her eyes out, and then you've got to settle her down. Yeah, I think it's a tough time. And I don't think it matters what age you are. I think they say that it's one of the most stressful things. It's amazing that when people are going through problems in the relationship, they have a child to bring themselves closer together. I've never got that. It's moving house, having a baby is supposed to be two of the most stressful things you can go through. And it is. It's one of the most stressful and one of the most rewarding. That's how I'd probably describe it. Ellie's 17 next month now, and she's like my little mini best friend. We've got an amazing relationship. Me and her mum are no longer together, but we co-parent really well. We get on. We talk often on the phone. It's great. But yeah, that first 12 months, I felt like it was quite scary. I thought quite a scary time.
Was there points for you as a new dad where there was depression kind of creeping its way in there?
I think, I don't think, David, I felt like I'd got my shit together in a lot of areas of my life. Yeah. I was, before we were living in Spain, I'd gone traveling and ended up in a place called Benidorm in Spain, on the Costa Blanca. I was handing out flyers to pull people into bars, was drinking as part of the job to give you a load of drinks so that you got all these people in. And then fast forward, and all of a sudden I'm working in a factory. I'm pressing a button that's like picking up a car part, taking it over here, and I was, this is kind of what I spoke about the event. I was that. Men live lives of quiet desperation. I was the man living a life of quiet desperation, really, at that time. Although from an outset, it looked like everything was going great. Oh, you live in Spain, you're partying all the time. But it was a mask to mask the fact that I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I was living for the day. So I think the sort of thought of having a baby, it wasn't the actual having a baby, because that did give me that great feeling, but the thought of it kind of doubled down on how I was already feeling about myself, which wasn't good, really.
Right.
But it did feel like on the day she was born that everything kind of clicked, really, and this is why I was here. It was a weird sort of feeling.
So, okay, Darren, I want to put you in a situation here. You and I walk into the waiting room at the local hospital. It's the maternity ward. This is where all the babies are going to be born. There's a nervous young dad, soon-to-be dad, first time, sitting there. He's looking at magazines that are so old they're irrelevant on the table. He's looking around the room. He's completely lost in the moment, a little overwhelmed. You and I walk in as two dads.
Yeah.
Sit down in that waiting room. What would you say to that young dad, soon-to-be dad? What does he need to hear? What did you need to hear? Waiting to be called down the hallway for the birth of your daughter. What did you need to hear in that moment?
Don't worry, you're gonna do a great job. You're gonna do a great job. That would be what I would need to hear at that time. Don't worry, arm around the shoulder. Don't worry, you're gonna do a great job. And just that sort of, I think, just that reassurance of that would have meant so much at that time. And I suppose, family members probably did say that without saying that, but maybe like later on, my dad and that, and we were all very supportive, and my mum. But it was, I think at that moment, that was kind of what I would have needed to hear, really. I think I'm very much on one of the chapters actually on the second book is your children will watch what you do more than they listen to what you say. And I think that would have been an important thing people tell me. Luke, doesn't matter what you tell them, you need to be living the life that you want them to lead. If you want kind children, be kind. If you want healthy children, be healthy. If you want fit children, be fit. And do those things yourself, and they'll follow suit. They're always listening, aren't they, and watching us all the time. Not necessarily listening when we're telling them something, but if you're on the phone, what did you just say then? They're always there. And they're so in tune. And I think if you lead the life that makes you feel good, they will follow suit in that, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I think the other thing we could say to them too is it's okay to not feel like you have to do this all on your own.
100%.
It's okay to do this in community, right?
Yeah,
it's okay
definitely.
It's okay to reach out to other people and go, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I love that.
The baby's been crying for 2 days straight. Everything I'm trying doesn't work. I'm stressed out. My partner's stressed out. I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
Right? There's no training. Again, they leave. Nothing. We can walk out of the hospital. Nobody comes home.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm so responsible for something that I have no training with.
Yeah.
And I just feel so inadequate. Right?
Definitely. I can remember one night, did you guys call it a pacifier? Yeah, pacifier. We call it a dummy. But the nickname that Ellie had for it was Diddly D. She used to call it a Diddly D, David. And her mum was at work, and I was settling her down on the night, and I couldn't find this Diddly D anywhere. She was screaming for it. She was, where is it? And I was looking in the fridge. I was looking at all these stupid places, like when you lose something and you can't find it. And I remember seeing this. Thing on Super Nanny where she sat by the door of the bedroom and she moved. No, sorry, she sat by the cot or the bed as it was, and moved further and further towards the door, and until the baby went to sleep. And when the baby went to sleep, she then went out the door. Didn't work the first time. If you wake up, you go straight back to the bed. And I kept on doing it because, the comfort of you being there sort of settles them down. And she went to sleep after it was probably about 2.5 hours. It was a long time. And she never asked for it again. She asked after that night. She never even asked for it. And the weird thing was as well, I never even found it. We had two, and it never turned up. I thought, this will turn up 2 weeks later. We never found it, and to this day, me or Mum, we don't know where it went. But
that's a great story there.
Good feeling, that you're doing a good job. That kind of really gave me a sort of lift when she didn't want that again. It was nice.
So did you, when you're up there talking to that group, there's two dads in the room, two guys.
Yeah.
Were you kind of directing your thoughts and your comments towards the two men in the room or to all the women in the room? How were you focusing your attention as you were speaking?
I think I was putting myself back in that place of where I was then, David, I think. And I think that's probably why it come across really well to the people, because I was reminiscing as if when I was back there. So I suppose, speaking from the heart without sounding cheesy, and just sharing that story. And, the Janine from the Just Family came up and gave me a big hug after. And somebody came up, said, you're natural born speaker, which, like I say, I'm definitely not. I've had no speaking practice or anything. And I've known for my business that I've needed to get on stage and I've needed to talk. So I've done it in the past and I've just kept on doing it, even though the thought of it, you're on your way to an event and you think, I hope it's cancelled, that I haven't got to do this talk. But I don't get that anymore. I quite enjoy it now when I get up there. So you're progressing. But I think it was Joe Rogan who said that if you leave everything long enough, so he was talking about like being a stand-up comedian, that if he left it long enough, the anxiety would kick in, where if you just keep doing it any opportunity you've got. And that's why I don't really rehearse anything. I try and just write down a few key points, and then if somebody just wants you to get up and speak, I think if you're passionate about something, you can chat about it anyway. So it's just having a couple of key points. But it's interesting because I never thought of that until he asked that question. But I think I just took myself back to that place where I was really, and that really worked. Because when I got on the stage, there was only one guy there, and I'd spoken to him beforehand, and I said, how are you doing? I'm Darren, the only other guy in the room. So I introduced myself, and he says, I'm Chris. And then another guy must have came in like in the meantime when I jumped on stage. As it turned out, there was another event on the same day at the same time. And I think it was a little bit more, it was a very similar event, David, I think, but I think it was a little bit more male orientated. So I think the guys had probably gone to there. So it ended up at a group full of ladies.
There you go. Well, for this podcast, Dad Space, even though we're highly focused on dads, over 60% of my audience are females.
Oh, amazing.
So there you go.
Amazing.
So they're here listening to you right now.
Great stuff.
I guess the one thing I have a question for you, though, Darren, is the fact that when we talk about, a prenatal and perinatal, all of that, we kind of get the impression that it leans more towards the mother.
Yeah.
And her journey through all this, because, again, she's doing all of the work in the sense of this, all about her. And there's a lot of things happening with her physically, mentally, through the whole process.
Yeah.
But there's this guy in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
And I can remember one example was going in to have my first, and the doctor looking at me like we're getting ready to have this is going to happen. Doctor looks at me, he's like, "Are you good?" I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Again, I'm just this 20-some-year-old guy in the room going, where do I stand? What do I do? How do I stay out of the way? He's like, and the doctor looked at him, he's like, okay, no offense, but nothing here is about you right now. So if you pass out, no one's catching you. If you pass out, no one's coming for you. You're just going to stay. And in that moment, you know what? Those words, even though he was kind of joking with me in the moment because he wanted to calm me down, no one's here for you right now.
Wow.
After everything was done and the baby's born, everybody's healthy, everybody's fine. I remember sitting in the corner of the room hearing, nobody's here for you.
Wow.
And I'm like, I felt so alone.
Yeah.
Because here I'm holding the baby. My wife is resting and recuperating, and I'm holding this new life. But all I could hear in my head was, nobody's here for you.
Nobody's here for you, yeah.
And I'm just like going, but this is the time I need somebody the most.
Yeah.
Family comes in, parents come in, all that. That's great. They come, but they go. They all go home.
Yeah.
And here I am, right? The baby can't find the pacifier and screaming.
Yeah.
There's no one else here.
Yeah.
There's nobody here for you. And I just wanted, that's why I created the podcast.
Amazing.
Because I wanted people to, if you've ever heard those words in your life that nobody's here for you, that there is somebody here for you.
Definitely.
Like, you have these great books in the world. You're here as a resource, as a person that could speak to somebody in that moment when they do feel like there's nobody here for me.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I love having you on the podcast, because I just want that dad, again, that's going to leave that waiting room and walk down the hallway, and jokingly the doctor's going to say something along the lines of, if you faint, there's no one here.
Not for you,
Right? And I just want them to know that there is someone.
100%. 100%.
Okay.
I think, them connections are so important. And I think getting a group of the right people around you. And when I became a dad, there was no other dads. And I think that's probably why when we started this dads group, why it was so important to me, because I can remember that feeling of, I did have some good friends at the time, but they weren't dads. So they'd come round, a couple of beers and a pizza, and you could have a chat, but you couldn't have a chat about anything that was going on, because they didn't get it. They didn't understand. So this dads group was set up at the beginning of COVID. Unfortunately, the funding ended on that one, but I run another dads group. And it was a lifeline for these guys over COVID, because they were single dads there. So they had full custody of the children, and just somebody that at the end of the phone, I rang them every Wednesday. Some of them I'd be on the phone for 2 minutes. Some of them would be on the phone for an hour. It just depended what was going on at that time in their life. Sometimes we were just like, I've had a great week. Everything's good. Yeah, no worries. I'll speak to you next week. But then other times, some struggle, or sometimes, David, just wanted to blurt everything out. They didn't want any solutions. They didn't want any answers. They just wanted somebody to just vent to and just get everything off the chest, which was nice. But what I would advise any sort of new dads is try and tap into that network beforehand. Try and look for those guys before the baby's born. And one of the things I would definitely advise to the mums, which is one of the things I said the other night, is if he wants to go down the pub for a beer with his mates, or he wants to, nip out for a game of golf, just let him. I know you've got a lot on your plate and you're doing a lot, but he also just needs that little space. Mums are very good at getting together with other mums and really just chatting about everything going on. Yeah. Where for a dad, it might be that he just needs to nip down the pub for an hour and a half with another one of his guy mates who's also got children or got older children, and just chat. And sometimes I think just knowing that somebody else is there, you might not even need to chat. There might not even be anything that comes up, but you just know that somebody else is there. Should you need a little bit of advice and guidance? On the flip side to that, people can always offer you the advice of things from their side, which isn't always necessarily great either, is it? One of the things for me, as getting older, as Ellie getting older, is they kept on saying, it'll all change when she gets up to the high school. Really sort of talking fear into that everything's going to turn bad when she went up to high school. She's, touch wood, she's like, me and her mum sometimes are like, joking, who's this child? Because she's so sensible. And we weren't sensible at that age. But it's lovely to see. It is lovely to see.
It's great. Darren, I love the fact that you're here on the show and that we can talk about this, and that we can help a dad that's maybe dealing with this perinatal depression and kind of finding their way in life. And I love the fact that you said build up your resources, build up your community before.
Definitely.
Not after. It's kind of that whole thing about dig the well before you're thirsty.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Invest all the time and effort before you need that drink. Yeah, that's the best time to start doing that.
I think, David, there might not be anything in your area necessarily, but there's online communities. The fact that we're sitting here, we're having this conversation now. There's always somebody to connect to. Some really good friends who I've got, I've never actually met face to face. I'm meeting one guy, next July next month. We've chatted on the phone for an hour and a half sometimes, but we never actually physically met until we're meeting next month. So there's communities out there that might not necessarily be in your community. If they're in your community, I think that's a lot better, because sometimes getting out of the house and just physically connecting with people is really, really important. But seek those communities out online if you can't find them. Especially in Canada, some of the towns are quite far, aren't they, from anywhere, where at least in England, a lot of places are reasonably close together. My girlfriend, she's from Kansas, and she doesn't live nothing at driving 6 hours, where for me, 6 hours is 6 hours. We're not going 6 hours away. What do you mean? She was after a new car,
yeah.
and she found one. It was up in Scotland. I'm like, we're not going to Scotland for a car. And she said, it's not that far. Like, it's miles away. And she says, we don't think anything of going to another state for a car, where we won't go past an hour down the road in case we need to take you back.
See, I love that. That's good. You can be in a totally different country.
Yeah.
Even that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Well, there you go. Okay, Darren. So as far as connecting with you again, let's mention the website. How do we get a hold of you? The book, all of that stuff, your books, everything. Where do we go? What do we do?
Yeah. So I'm Darren J. Brookes, David. I'm Darren J. Brookes on every platform. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm taking a little bit of a social media break, but if people want to add me as a friend or follow, I'll accept when I go on. And both books are on Amazon. When I search on my Amazon, I just search the book title, but I think if you're searching from Canada, probably Darren J. Brookes, Dreams to Goals, or 23 Rules of Life that most people don't want to hear. They're both available on Kindle and both available on paperback as well.
Can you give us one of those rules of the 23 that we can end off with, Darren, that maybe a dad needs to hear?
Yeah, I think the rule one, actually, David, is the most important person in your life is you. And the reason that's one, I think a lot of people, my partner's the most important person, my children are the most important person in my life. However, it's like the air mask analogy. If the plane's going down, you've got to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help everybody else. And I think sometimes we've got to be selfish with looking after ourselves, and we've got to be at our best so that we can then be the best for our children that are coming into the world, or for our partner when they need it, or for our children, even if they're older. But I think, you are the most important person in your life. It's not anybody else. And as long as you look after you can then give your best to everybody else in your life. And I think that's really important.
There you go. And that ties right back into that whole comment about there's no one here for you.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
There you go. Thank you for doing that, Darren. That was really good.
Nice. Really
everyone, all the information for Darren is in the show notes. Make sure you go buy both books, gift the books, and share these out with your community. And if you're a new dad going down that hallway this week to meet your first, second, third, whatever, born in your life, just remember there's two dads here that are thinking about you and cheering you on. So Darren, Thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Amazing. Cheers, David. Pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to Dad Space. Thanks for hanging out to the end of the podcast. That's a great sign to wherever you're listening to this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, fill in the blank, that this was a good podcast to send people to. So simply by listening to this point of the podcast, you're helping the show grow. So good on you. Thanks for helping us grow Dad Space. If you want to help us fill our cups over at Dad Space, head over to dadspace.ca. Dadspace.ca, simple website, right? Dadspace.ca. You can fill up our coffee cup, which helps us then to keep moving forward with the podcast, and use our Buy Me a Coffee link over at dadspace.ca. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for coming back. And thank you for sharing, because the more dads we can help, the better. We're all here to help each other grow in community. That's what it's all about. And without you, the podcast is pointless. There's no reason to do any of this. So you being here means everything. See you at dadspace.ca.